No, that was a pure guess.
The
It was
nastiest thing in the
raining
whole
pretty
world.
hard
those
at
are
my house, but
amazing.
not for very long.
Oh, well, sir, you can have them.
Good, how are you
Well,
doing?
I got up early this morning and walked, and it had already
It's kinda
rained.
like
It was
candy
in the
corn.
pause,
So
and then
where's
at
the
the
candy
other end of where I
difference?
walked, it started again.
Yeah.
Green light's on, so watch what
Might
you
as well.
say.
Not heavy.
All right. It is 4:00, and I'm going to call the November meeting of the EIC to order and send out a request if anyone will lead us in the invocation to start our meeting. I should probably ask you guys in advance.
I'll pray.
Thank you.
All right. Please bow with me. Our Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for your many blessings. We thank you for your faithfulness and your goodness. We ask that you would give all of us guidance and direction so that we may lead this city and help make it a great place for our whole community. And we pray all these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Craig. You know, when I was under Mayor Blackburn, we just rotated the prayer every meeting. So then I would forget then too. When it was my turn. So, all right. We have a visitors and citizens forum, and this is for any citizen that has business not on the agenda. I see two people here. Do either of you have business not on the agenda that you'd like to talk about? Okay. All right. Nobody signed up, I assume.
We have no signed up speakers.
All right, we'll go on to item number 3, approval of the minutes. The minutes were in the packet that was sent out. Any changes or clarifications to the minutes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I so moved.
Okay, we've got a motion, a second.
Second.
All right, all in favor, please let it be known by raising your hand. All right, very good. We'll move on to item number 4, monthly reports. 4A, KEDC. Update, Katie.
All right. Is this working today? Yeah.
I did.
I'll speak loudly.
Can everybody hear Katie okay?
Anyways, good afternoon, Chair Clarkson, members of the EIC, Katie Milton Jordan on behalf of KEDC. I'll be presenting today's staff report. The highlights of today's presentation, it's a little bit lengthier than normal since it's been a while since we've seen one another. I will be reviewing the highlights of Project Nexus, a new project with some prospects we're visiting with, highlighting our team, tools, and technology during this transition since the executive director left, our Child Care Summit, the Texas Venture Fest Impact Report, the ZEC Deck, which is a new board and stakeholder tool that we'll be introducing you to this evening, and a few lowlights. So Project Nexus at a glance actually came out of our Texas Venture Fest event. It is about a $10 million capital investment that includes equipment, building, etc. They are projecting that they will have about 34 employees, half professional engineers, skilled labor, all paying well above the average county wage. Year 1 revenues are expected to be around $26 million and increasing to year 5 of $112 million. The prospects are looking for about an 8-acre tract for their world headquarters that would have a 25,000 to 40,000 square foot building. The utility requirements are down there below. I'm excited about this project because it is very unique, and some unique characteristics of this project is that the owner-founder is a Kerrville native. He's a graduate of Tivy, and he's a military vet. This potential project uses innovative technology that converts waste into energy. The economic benefits is that it would support local economies with job creation, adding approximately $13 in value per $5 recycled pallet. The team is largely composed of veterans, and they have developed several products and identified at least 55 applications, indicating substantial growth potential. I'll bring us to the team, tools, and technology. I'd like to introduce you to Cameron Weingar. He's the founder and operations director of a consulting firm called BRE Plus. In response to some of our BRE requests, we brought on Cameron and his team for a 90-day trial that began on November 1st. We've had some really great metrics reporting out just from our first couple weeks of working with these folks, and I'll share those with you in just a moment. I'd also like to reintroduce you to Teresa Metcalf. Many of you remember she was my predecessor at KEDC before I joined the team in 22. We've brought her back on as an economic development consultant, supporting us in finance, operations, and an institutional knowledge project. We are gathering all the institutional knowledge since the inception of the KEDC in 2011 up to today, and we are going to put it in a centrally located drive that stakeholders have easy access to, and it will improve our stakeholder engagement, our presentation. It will also improve our confidentiality and improve our efficiencies.
Is she still in Colorado, or is she local again?
Nope, she's still in Colorado. One of the reasons that she was selected is because she has a lot of the institutional
I was
knowledge.
just curious on a personal level.
Yep,
Absolutely.
yep. We also have Alex Barrett, who's heading up our marketing, social media, and public relations. She has actually been working as a consultant on our team since the fall of 22. We introduced her to our board at our last board meeting, and there were a handful of board members that were surprised to meet her for the first time, but she has been on our team for quite some time. We also have Chelsea Four. She is heading up marketing and events coordinator. And if you really knew Chelsea, you would know that she is the mother of 5 beautiful children. And she used to work at the Kerrville Daily Times and commuted daily for 2 years from Mason to Kerrville to work at the Kerrville Daily Times. So we are excited to be able to retain this talent in our community. Which brings me to the State of Child Care Summit. Yes, Celeste?
Can we come back?
Yep.
So is the Project Nexus, is this person part of your, I'm not sure I understand how he shows up in the employee stuff.
No, I apologize. I should have been more clear. Project Nexus is a project that we've just recently come upon. It's not part of the team tools and technology. So I could have made my segue better. I apologize.
Okay, and then are they looking for anything from the EIC, or is something that KEDC is just supporting and helping to move forward in the community?
Correct. They do not have an ask at this time. We are courting them to try to help them find, hopefully, our community will be able to meet their needs and we can recruit them to our community. So there's no ask at this time.
But they haven't chosen Kerrville yet.
No, we are currently in competition with Vancouver, Washington as well, which is where the research and development facility is currently located.
Okay.
So Project Nexus is a code name for the project, is that correct?
That is correct. So I will jump back to our State of Child Care Summit.
Can I ask
Yep.
one more thing, Katie? The people that you have shown on here as being contract, I guess, employees, Teresa's new, but the other
The consulting firm person, what was his name?
Teresa-
So 2 are new, and then 2 new again.
Right. Teresa's been, she came back about a year ago.
Okay.
Alex has been with us since the fall of 22, and Chelsea is a new addition.
Okay.
And then was the consulting firm, are they also part of your employee base, or you're contracting with them to do consulting?
They're also a consultant.
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear on what they're doing.
No, that's totally fine. They're helping head up our business retention and expansion initiative.
Okay.
So they are initiating reach out calls and helping support our business retention and expansion platform in engaging existing business owners that are here in Kerrville and in the greater Kerr County.
So how long are they going to be contract? Is it going to be a permanent position, or is it just to kind of do something specific?
The trial period started on November 1st, and we have a 90-day trial with them. And at the end of that trial, then we'll have an option to elect if we want to engage in a 1-year contract. Childcare? So yes, the State of Child Care Summit is scheduled for December 17th at Shriner University. It is a half-day event. The doors open at 7:30. Please, I encourage you to invite your employees, your teammates, your colleagues. The program is very simple, especially on this screen. There are 3 main components to this program. The first part of the program, we have 3 keynote speakers that will come in to educate our civic leaders and our primary employers on the nuanced challenges of childcare that our community is facing. The second part of the program, we are going to have a panel of experts and community leaders that will be discussing potential solutions, pros, cons, how do we overcome this, how do we overcome that. And the third part of the program is actually going to be dedicated time. It's going to be about 60 minutes where we are going to break the audience out into small groups. Each small group will have a professional facilitator that will help engage the group in conversations so that they can discuss the creative strategies that are going to be presented and begin the dialogue about what our community wants to look at doing moving forward. So folks will have an opportunity to elect, I like this idea, I don't like that idea. They will also have an opportunity to prioritize. I think A needs to be done before B, so on and so forth. We believe it's going to be the beginning of a very helpful dialogue that will help position us for even greater success in this space moving forward. Here is the impact report from our Texas Venture Fest that we hosted in October. It was open to the public, but we did send out about 100 personalized invitations. 78 RSVP'd, 71 attended. Of that, the breakdown of attendees are 35 recognized themselves as founder or startups. 16 recognized themselves as limited partners, which I would also define as a founder or startup. 14 identified as other, and 6 were service providers. If you take a look at the event investment, the cost of the event was around $8,300. We were able to offset that cost by about $5,600 for a net cost to the organization of about $2,600. Here are a few of the testimonials that we received from the event participants. Also, a highlight of the sponsors that helped us offset those costs. We also, after every event, send out a Net Promoter Score survey, which everyone has probably seen one of those with your favorite retail organization on a scale of 1 to 10. Would you recommend so-and-so to a friend? We're sending that out to all the folks that engage with us. Unfortunately, our engagement for the Net Promoter Score is relatively low. Of the folks who attended, of the 71 who attended, we only received 9 responses. But of the 9 responses, 7 participants gave us a 10. 1 participant gave us a 9, and 1 participant gave us an 8. And when measuring Net Promoter Scores, we consider anything that's a 7 or above as a positive Net Promoter Score. Anything that's below 7 would be considered a detractor score. And so all of our Net Promoter Scores that we've received from our events over the last 2 years have been Net Promoter Scores.
Katie,
Yep.
do you have any information about the breakdown of the participants, whether they represented startups or existing established businesses?
No, I don't have any information on the age of the company, which I think is what you're asking, because a lot of people will still identify as a founder or startup, but their company could be 50 years old. So at this time, we don't have that data, but I'd be happy to take a closer look and see if we can get some anecdotal answers to that. Here are a few photos from the event. We certainly had a good time, and thank you to anyone that's here this evening that was able to join us. This brings me to the ZEC Deck. This is a new software as a solution technology tool that we have invested in. It was a very small investment, and I think that it's going to be well worth it. Each of our stakeholders is going to receive email access to a ZEC Deck going forward. This is just the top of the screen, but what it is it's like a personalized website for each one of our stakeholders. And before our presentations, you're going to be able to scroll through this entire ZEC Deck and see all of the relevant information in our presentation, all the data that would be relevant to our updates. We're also going to have a folder there that's going to allow you access to our institutional knowledge. So our bylaws, our formation documents, financials, meeting minutes, anything that you would want to know about the organization is going to be available to you on your computer, your tablet, or your smartphone.
So by stakeholders, you mean like boards such as the IC and whoever you designate it at the county, city?
Correct. Yep. And we get to control the permission settings, confidentiality settings, and they email a code to your email. So they have, anti-fraud technology that prevents this from getting in the wrong hands. But we're really excited about this ZEC Deck because we believe it's going to streamline our reporting. increase our efficiency, and increase stakeholder engagement. One of the feedback that I got from a stakeholder one-on-one that I had recently is that it's been a challenge in the past to have our stakeholder updates be so far apart. Historically, we're reporting to the KEDC at the beginning of the month, we're reporting to the EIC at the middle of the month, we report to KPUB and the county at also different times, and so it causes our reports to be different each time we present to somebody. So what we intend to do with this ZEC deck going forward is to send out one monthly report at the beginning of the month to all of our stakeholders, so everybody gets the same report. And then as we report out one-on-one throughout the rest of the month, we'll be able to provide different updates as the project moves along. But that will ensure that all of our stakeholders are getting the same information at the same time. Here are lowlights. We've also been approached by a new project, Motion. The founder has a PhD in mechanical engineering. Developed the first prototype at Cornell University in 2023. This gentleman is Boston-based. However, he temporarily moved to Dallas to participate in their TechStars program. TechStars awarded him a round of funding of $120,000. We're currently in competition with Boston, and he desires a community familiarization tour with the medical sector. So we'll be reaching out to our primary employers in the medical sector to find a mutually convenient time that we can facilitate an introduction and learn more about this gentleman's project.
And how did Kerrville get into the mix? I mean, I'm just curious.
We had a local advocate that advocated for Kerrville and facilitated an introduction.
Why is it a low light?
Because the project hasn't come to fruition yet. I believe that we need to bring him here and highlight what our community has to offer. And then I think that
He's basically just heard about it but never been here.
exactly. So we're at the very beginning stage of the project, and so that's why it's listed as a low light. So the BRE Plus numbers since November 1st. I did get an email from Cameron this morning after I sent this presentation out, and our numbers are actually higher than what you see on the screen. So I sent this presentation just a few hours too early. I believe that our numbers are somewhere around 35 calls, 23 reached, and 1 survey completed. So since November 1st, we have populated 1,377 businesses into this database. We have made around 35 calls, reached 23 business owners, and captured 1 survey. To put this into perspective, during fiscal year 23 and 24, we made 36 BRE calls, which exceeded our BRE goal of 22. So if we keep up this pace, we're on track for a 400% increase in BRE if this is maintained.
And how are these 1377, how does that number come to be?
Well, part of it is part of their secret sauce, their intellectual property, if you will. But they are using public databases like the Chamber of Commerce, for example, to go in there and scrape the publicly available information on the businesses that are listed on there. But they have a variety of methods to secure that data. We've given them a few internal lists of contact information that we have, but it's not 1,377. So they have some creative ways to gather that data and populate that information. And we also have an opportunity to provide them feedback and say whether we want them to focus on a downtown sector, for example, which is what they've been doing since November 1st, or if we want them to focus on a specific community within Kerr County.
What does a call look like or sound like? What is that?
He actually sent me one this afternoon. He sent me a recording of a voicemail that he left for a local business owner. And then he also sent me a phone call that he recorded with a local business owner. And to protect the privacy of the folks that he called, that's probably something that I'll put in your ZEC deck. So next month in December, y'all will be able to log in there and listen to those audio recordings if you want to hear what their presentation is.
So he is this consulting firm? Is that the he that you're talking about?
Correct.
So are these just strictly phone calls, or are there any in-person visits? And can you generally kind of give us an idea about what the,
What the reason is?
yeah, I mean, what do they cover in those contacts?
Yep, typically, so one of the things that Cameron has is he does this for economic development organizations across the state. And so they've curated a library of resources and knowledge base that's common for business owners, small to medium-sized business owners to request. if they need resources to, how do I navigate this latest grant that was, pushed out by the state or by the federal government? Can you tell me more about a business line of credit, or who should I talk to about that? Or I need some information on whether to form a nonprofit or a for-profit organization. So they have a base of general business knowledge that they're able to, they call the business owners and they say, hey, I'm, working with your local economic development organization. I just wanted to see if there's anything that I can do. This is free to you. And are there any business challenges that you're currently experiencing that I can help you overcome? And so one of the things that's nice about using Cameron for something like this is that it is just phoning. And so we can put a lot of cold calling on there. So if there are businesses that are located out in the county that it would be difficult for us to go up and knock on their door for one reason or another, Cameron can help get us a warm introduction. He can also help get us in the door with a company, because Cameron is meant to be part of our lead generation process. And so when Cameron reaches out to the folks, if they're like, no, I'm good, I don't have any questions, I'm not planning on any expansions at this time, check back in 6 months. Cameron's like, great. He adds some notes to the file that we have access to the CRM. And so we know where that business owner is at and we're able to report to you. But when Cameron comes across a business owner that needs some help that's beyond, here, let me send you a PDF, or let me, direct you to this website. If a business owner's like, no, I want to do an expansion, I can't fit in my building anymore. We need to bring on 10 new employees like yesterday. Then that would be a situation where Cameron would turn it over to us, and then we would be boots on the ground. And so he helps us with the lead generation, and it's just a very efficient use of time when we're dividing and conquering the task that way. Other lowlights, the transition plan. I believe I shared a copy of that with you. This was the transition plan that I presented to the KEDC board at the beginning of October when Gil resigned. It highlights what we're aiming to accomplish by the end of this year. Another initiative that we've taken on that's not highlighted on the transition plan is an internal cleanup project, somewhat related to our institutional knowledge project. So we're gathering all of our financials from the last 13 years. We're doing an analysis on them. We're taking a look at what the ROI to our community is and what our community stakeholders are. We're taking a look at what the contributions have been from each one of our stakeholders so that we can map that out to our return on investment. And we hope to present that to you in the coming months. We're also in the process of reviving the Rural Air Mobility Project with the new airport manager, Andrew Munoz. I already mentioned the centrally located institutional knowledge project that will be unveiled when you guys get access to the ZEC. Again, we're reviewing the budget along with the historical impact data since 2011. We have scheduled the visit with the Office of the Governor for January 8th. This was one of my projects that we wanted to complete before year end, but we had some scheduling conflicts, and so we had to move that to January 8th. But we are excited to bring along Dr. Ringo from Kerrville ISD and Dr. Curran from Ingram ISD. Both of them are going to be presenting on the unique educational pathways that they have available in their schools that support the labor force. So we're really looking forward to that. We have begun stakeholder one-on-one visits. As of this afternoon, I've completed 4 of 35. I'm aiming to complete 80% by year end. So a bit of an ambitious goal, especially with a lot of holiday time in there. But as of today, we've done 4 of 35. And we are looking at planning a stakeholder retreat for Q1 of 2025. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
What did you win?
Oh, this is for the Texas Venture Fest that we hosted in 2023. So now we get to say that it's an award-winning event.
Speaking of the Venture Fest,
Yeah.
what are your plans or ideas for increasing the participation in that?
I'm glad you asked that question. We've gotten some really good feedback from our attendees and our partners from this past year's event, and we think that there's a great opportunity there to increase attendees and participation going forward. And so what we're tentatively planning on doing is forming a Texas Venture Fest committee that will meet for the first time in January 2025. So that we can begin to outline what we want this next year's event to look like, and also to give us a longer runway for planning in order to achieve the goals that the committee will set up.
Any thoughts on asking for partners like the Chamber, Westcott Chamber, the Women's Chamber?
I think that that's a very good idea, and we're looking forward to a lot of collaborative opportunities in 2025. And so I will certainly add that feedback to our plan. Thank you.
Logistically, the allocation of the funds, are most of the things we went over today and positions, are those already budgeted in, or was there, because of Gil leaving, some things that have been shifted around in the budget for this year?
We had proposed a budget to our KEDC board at last month's meeting, and the board decided that before it could be approved, that we needed to do a deeper dive. But yes, all of those expenses were included in the existing budget. What we had to do was we had to move around some spending categories and combine a few chart of accounts in order to accommodate it, but it was within the budget that was approved.
Other questions for Katie?
We do have one citizen speaker.
Oh, okay. So let's hear from our citizen speaker.
Bill Blackburn?
You passed your time? Oh. Okay, all right. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Excellent.
All right. Great job, Katie. And Trina, monthly financial report.
You want to skip my
Oh,
stuff?
I'm sorry. I wrote notes all over, and so now I can't see where anything is.
can skip
Oh,
it.
yeah.
You
Let's,
can skip it.
yeah, what do you have to say? All right, I'm sorry. Let's go back to 4B. See, I wrote it all over.
And thank you.
Sure.
You're done? Best presentation ever.
No, it's been a little while since we met, so there has been some things accomplished over the last 2 months. Thank you all for taking the time today. The Streetscapes is basically complete. The last little piece that we're looking at is that overhead lighting.
Is that gonna happen?
I'm hoping so, I'm trying to keep up.
Well,
and-
is there something that goes along with the AC Shriner renovation and the underground utilities through
So that-
there?
So that's all done, right? So that was done as a part of that, right? So that we could have the increase in
already
the
done. That
electric
part's already done.
capacity that's over there. So that piece is finished. And so the streetscapes also is done. So Sandy Callow donated those, the landscaping. That's all in those boxes that you see out there now. So that's the last little piece. So we're still working on that with K-Pub. But it's moving its way along. It could wait until the AC Shriner House is done, because it is a construction zone. So I don't know that it's going to be that flashy with all that work being done around there. If you have noticed, there's a bunch of extra fence also along the Callow Foundation property. I got a lot of questions about that. I think that is just to ensure that people aren't parking there while it's under construction. It's not, there isn't a construction project that we're working with them on. I think that was just kind of a preemptive effort, like, please don't park all your construction equipment here. So we've told everybody to park in the garage, and obviously any earth-moving equipment's on site. But just to preempt if anybody had any questions about that, yeah. All right, quality of life projects, the golf course. We are at $2.5 million right now. So we have a contract with XGD contractors, and they're going to begin in January, maybe late December, depending. And those are the folks that are going to do all the greens, the tee boxes, the kind of the agronomy golf work, right? MC Fonseca has been contracted with. We did engineering on the bridges to redo the bridges that are out there. So they're under contract now. So that one, so the golf portion is 1.5, 1.43. The bridges is about $440,000. We've completed work out in the maintenance yard and the maintenance barn. Done a little bit of work on the cart storage facility. We just put something to the council. It's a green bathroom. So if you've been to the golf course, there is a bathroom on hole number 2. And so that wasn't originally hole number 2, and there's a reason it was there. But it switched the alignment, and we don't need a bathroom on the second hole. So if you got to go by hole 2, that's on you, right? And so that is going to get torn down, and because the other, the best location is going to be on between hole 12 and 13, all the way in the back. Hard to get utilities out there, hard to comply with fire code if the building's a certain size. So we purchased a green bathroom, essentially. We'll have to fill it up with water periodically, but it will kind of compost itself, and it's a neat process. Kind of hits a couple of marks. You know, it's eco-friendly. It's not tied to the system. It's not using potable water. So it's be an interesting, nice addition to the facility, and also provide a bathroom in the right space.
Kind of like a composting toilet that you see in state parks.
Somewhat like that. It's not the same, but it is very, very similar. Yeah. So I'll send you all the kind of the sheet on all of that. And then we're still pending quotes on plumbing and HVAC work at the pro shop, and irrigation controls.
Is that part of the scope,
Huh?
the HVAC?
It is part of the scope, but it's like this one has multiple contractors, right? So you don't want those folks that are going to do the greens. They're not good at doing anything else. They can't. We didn't want them doing the bridges because that's not the kind of work they do. So this one's going to have kind of multiple prongs to it, but it's well under budget, and so we're going to want to bring back to you all, like, hey, if once we get pretty far into this process, or really just a little further, there
More
should be
money
some
to allocate
savings.
to
Yeah.
the
Are there
two
other
parks?
things that we want to do out there, or does the board want to reallocate that elsewhere? Remember, these funds have to be spent because of the nature of the bond. So that's golf. The pool is design development phase, so it's schematic design, which is, you know, what you hope you want. Design development, you're kind of really under the hood. You hope you're close, and then you get to construction documents. So the design development phase is still a little bit over budget, so it needs to come down. And I just got an email right as the meeting started about kind of doing that. We're about 160 grand off where we need to be. So the Marmon Mock folks are getting paid just about $900,000 total for design and construction administration, and that leaves about 6.2 for the project, or not 6.2. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, 6.2. And so they're at 6.26. So I need them to drop down about 160. There's some contingency built in there, but this, again, like the HHHC project, is a renovation, and I get nervous about what's underneath. And there's always something there that's like not cheap. And so we have to push that cost down further. So we got more conversations to have with
Any idea
Marmon
how
Mock.
far under you think the original golf project will be?
No, I
Too
mean, I
early to
think
tell.
next month, I'd like to bring that back to y'all and kind of talk that through. I want to talk it through with the city council as well, you know, but I want to make sure everybody's expectations are clear and we're not asking for funds from council and you all are like, hey, you've already spent these dollars. You know, I know we said 4 million, but if the project's under, it's under, you know. I think I'd be able to give you a better number in a month, maybe 2.
Well, I mean, it's possible if council and EIC is okay that funds could be reallocated within projects.
There's a lot of money there's a lot of, dollars to be spent at each one of these projects, you know, we're doing what, like, kind of minimum that we can. So we can do, Parks has more projects at the golf
Right.
course they would like to get done, but, you know, I said we can't just kind of go with our wish list. We have to come back and talk about it. So Calu Theater, that project came in, so we budgeted 4 million for that. It's 3 million, right under 3 million, 2.999960 was the contract for Guido Construction. Fun name. They do a really good job. It is a neat name for the project. Peter Lewis's portion is about 155, so there is some savings in that project as well. Now, I met with Peter and Jeffrey Brown this afternoon to kind of go, hey, are all the things that you've asked that are need repair, that are water damaged, are they all included in this? And so I think Peter got all of those in there. There's a few items that we're gonna have them put a list down and kind of present us with a scope. And I said, I'm not sure where we're gonna be, what we're gonna be able to do, but just tell me what they are. And if they're applicable, we can come ask. That's a good one. HHHC, the groundbreaking happened just the other day, so that is under construction. That is gonna be the full dollar amount. That's all I can tell you. So that one is gonna be every bit of the $2 million that you guys appropriated for it. But they're under construction, they're doing demolition, you've seen that trench out there, they're digging the hole for the elevator. And so that is underway. They're doing a good job out there so far. And lastly, for the sales tax bond, Granger McDonald. So we have schematic design from John Hewitt. So we have a concept, we have some drawings. It's still, I think, a steeper slope on the ramp that goes all the way down from the building at the GRC down to the water. So it's around 7.5%, and we want to see if we can reduce that number, because folks are going to be, right, taking boats down there. And so more we can reduce that, the better off it's going to be, which that might mean it winds a little bit more than it goes straight. Right. I will say that we are also meeting 2 weeks from now with a group called Native American Seed. And thank me for my service now, because he is an awesome guy. Bill Neiman is his name. He has been doing seed in Texas native seeds for 30 years, and he is very passionate about it. And we're going to spend every bit of 2 hours talking to him. And I don't know how far we're going to get. But the grasses that they use, they have 10, 12-foot roots. Ones they are really good for the soil, for erosion. And so we're just going to kind of talk about that a little bit and see if that's something that is worth incorporating. It's a neat piece of the project, I think.
Is this the man that's out of Fredericksburg? That man that's kind of-
Bill has an office, I think, out there. It's in Junction?
He's in Junction,
Oh, Junction.
Junction.
Yeah, Junction,
outside of Junction.
right.
He's got my
Yeah,
hair down
I've been
here
to
in a
his property.
ponytail.
It's really nice.
He's a great guy. It's fantastic. All right, that's all the sales tax projects.
Michael, do you have any estimated completion dates on any of these projects?
Yes, sir. Golf will be, the hope is that we're done end of July, early August. So Heart of the Hills tournament would be the kind of opening event. We actually asked them to push it back a little bit, and they agreed to, just to give us that extra couple of weeks of grow-in period. So that's for that one. The Calu Theater, we have told the theater that we're going to start March 5th, I think, is when it's starting. And we have given ourselves 6 months to get it done. But the hope is that we get it done earlier. But to fit within that schedule, it's no more than 6 months for that one, so that their next season will be complete. The pool will be closed all of next year. Construction will start once we get, construction plans we can work with, hire on a contractor, and then it would be open for the summer of '26 is the pool. HHHC will be handed over to the tenant, the Heart of the Hills Heritage Center, at the end of October, beginning of November next year. And then Granger McDonald is unknown yet. I can give you a better timeline once everybody agrees on a design that makes sense, then I can tell you. Travis Street Pump Station upsizing, we are beginning basically the engineering with that one. Starting now. So Schreiner, Lennar, we'll talk about it in a minute, or we can talk about it now. Lennar is closed on the first phase of that project with Schreiner. And so that's kind of the first they're going to do it in 2 takedowns. It's Pablo's term. I like that. So they're going to buy those in 2 phases. Really the update for Lennar is that they went into their they had to go into their contract with y'all was about to expire, and they had 90 days to cure. They completed that sale of the purchase of the property within that 90 days, but it was kind of close. So I didn't want to worry y'all about it until it was a thing, and they closed, and so. With that, I will turn it over. Habitat, I don't have too much information on at this point. And Shriner, the gym, the Eddington gym is now a shell, and they're doing dirt work on the exterior for the addition portion they're going to have, so they're currently underway. And then the Center for Talent and Workforce Development, they've hired a gentleman to run it. Talked about that in previous meetings, and so that is creation phase, and they're getting ready to go. Now I'll turn it over. I've been talking for a while.
That's good.
Michael, I want to ask just a question about the Calu Theater, just because Councilperson Seigerman asked, when you met with Peter Lewis, did he say what inside the building is wrong? I know she was talking about backdrops and things like that that were not part of the deal, but did he go into any detail about
What all
damage
that
to the
is?
inside?
Absolutely, yeah. So we spent, that was I wanted to go clarify all that with them because there was some confusion as to what was included and what was not. And so all of the interior that had been damaged by the weather, by the leaking in the roof, some in the women's restroom, the men's restroom especially, if you walk on top of the men's restroom, which I don't recommend, it's kind of bouncy. So nobody's supposed to be up there other than owners and people working on it. And then parts of the stage, thank you, that's the word. Parts of the stage as well. And so we spent some time talking about like, all right, what are the other things that are permanent fixtures in there that are deficient? And so working through that. But everything that they asked us to include in that is included into the scope for now, at this point.
Thank you, sir.
I'm going to mention for Habitat, just because we got some photos today. Habitat purchased a area on Gilmer Street that allowed Habitat to build up to 3 homes, and so they have been constructing the Type 2 place homes, and the pictures we received today. So remember, these will be the 80% model.
The workforce.
The workforce model. I'd invite all of you guys to go look at those homes. They are absolutely fantastic in my opinion. So that was being done. Those are being done kind of as prototypes for the new development. So yeah. Okay. Any other comments or questions for Mike? Thank you.
We'll do-
Sorry I skipped you.
No, I'm happy.
You did
That's
have a lot to
exciting.
say.
And I don't know that I'll do it every time. At this point, I was thinking about doing it quarterly, is doing, kind of a deeper dive, lots of photos, all the turning around, try to do it every month, but I'm going to do it at the very least quarterly. Like the last meeting we had that kind of, here's where everything's at. And so I'll try to do it for December. At the very least, we'll do it in January.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you. All right. This is Rodriguez.
Good afternoon. Long time no see. Okay, so before we start, we're gonna go over fiscal year 24 end and hash that out, and then we'll jump into October financials. So you're looking at, and for clarity, we're gonna do operational funds and then revenue bond funds, just so you know where you're at. Sales tax for fiscal year 24 landed at $4,951,000. Budget was $5,262,000, so that was a shortfall of $310,000, or 5.8%. We did our best with historicals to predict those, but the last 2 years has been just very tough, and it's just been a mixed bag of future and prior period payments and just, I guess, shortfalls in sales. Your interest income, $510,000. This budget was originally $161,000. Of course, that made up the shortfall in sales tax, but we had an excess of close to $350,000 in that category. You did sell land for $5,000, so it gives you a total revenues of $5,467,000. Down on your expenditure section, your administrative expenses were $550,000. Majority was the City of Kerrville contract at $205,000. That was a 2.5% increase over fiscal year '23. And then you had KEDC with a 10% increase over '23 at $343,000. Debt service did increase. Obviously, it was the 2023 revenue bond payments that we had to put out, and then the issuance costs for those obligations. And then down in your project section, these are only funded by the operational dollars you have, $1,183,000. And airport projects are all going to be off the list. Sid Peterson contract, and if we finish that downtown River Trail, y'all know we canceled that, and then Habitat is on your operational list. Total expenditures, $4,558,000 for the year, and net profit was $909,000. The only thing I don't have on here are your investments, but that's kind of a wash in and out when you purchase them. The main point is your interest income earning off of those items. All right, on to the sales tax revenue bonds. So $20 million in proceeds for all the quality of life projects. And we did put these into its own tax pool account, and it earns money monthly, so $870,000 for the year. Do keep in mind we have arbitrage calculations that should come in probably the second quarter of this fiscal year, so we'll kind of know how much we need to set aside as a liability if and when that penalty comes. So it gives you total revenues of $20,870,000, and then your projects that we paid out so far through September 30th, approximately $785,000 on that. So you still have $20 million sitting in the bank from the revenue bonds right now.
Rena, I
Yes,
know the Mega Crete land contribution grant was not a cash expense, but would that not be included among our projects for 2024?
It'd be on a balance sheet as part of your assets, disposal of the assets, right? So
If it was a grant of land, would that not go through the income statement just like a cash grant?
I was aware of just the $5,000.
It's non-cash, so when we did disposal of that property, it was about $1 million in property value. In fact, we just did it last week. You'll see it on the balance sheet. So you'll see that your total assets for the beginning of the year, total assets for the end of the year, because it's a non-cash. So it'll be a net loss on capital assets essentially, but it's gonna be on the balance sheet. Because there was no cash. So it'll be a net of what was on the books compared to what you sold it for, which is nothing essentially. But from the project standpoint, if you're just talking about tracking, then yes, we'll have the project list, which will be on.
Yeah, we need to add that one to the project list as far as, because it's a little different, but we need to make sure. Yeah, so just to update you on where they're at, they initially submitted a TCEQ permit for aggregate plant, but they are not. And so TCEQ was kind of confused by that, and so because it's the first one outside of the one plant in Florida here in the U.S., and so they have a new permit that is going to run through TCEQ. So it's going to take a little bit longer for that process to go through for them because it's a new permit type that TCEQ hasn't issued before. Everybody still feels fantastic about the project and good about what it is, but state agencies confused it.
Oh, boy.
Or two.
So you said they have submitted their permit, though?
Oh, yeah. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. So that'll show up in the audit and not on the balance sheet, not on your monthly financials.
But could it show up also on the project update?
Yes, ma'am. I'll put that on there.
Okay.
Yep.
We'll dig around, make sure we didn't record something wrong or anything like that. All right, on to October financials. Let's see here. So I kind of gave you a yellow highlight because we have a lot of things added to our list. So for monthly financials, we'll combine your revenue bond and operational funds, but I just gave you a breakout for the year and it's just cleaner. So your fiscal year 25 sales tax budget is $5,104,000, and we did reduce that down by 3% from the fiscal year 23 and 24 budgets. That was the $5,262,000. October sales tax was $380,000. This is a shortfall of 18% compared to October of 23. However, October 23 did have 99,000 in future period payments. So if you take that back, we would be up a little bit, 3%, I think.
Again?
I'm sorry?
I missed what you said that,
They paid early.
okay.
Yeah, the future
got it.
period. And that's kind of what we've been getting into. We can't just have a clear-cut comparison lately. It's just some people pay early, some pay late, and it's
Okay.
just not true all the way across. But we did have November sales tax hit last week, and it was 403,000, which is a 7% increase over November of 23. The preliminary report shows that there was very little prior period payments, no future period payments, but a $50,000 audit collection. So we just got to work with a lot of.
Remind me, Trina, on the estimate, are you running that through just 12 months with the same number in each month?
We actually take the last 3 years
Okay,
to
so
see
it's
how
not
it's
just gonna, it's not gonna lay out the same every month.
correct.
Okay.
I actually wanted to change that methodology up a little bit and use just last year's, but it was still wonky. So I was just like, let's just take an average and
Okay.
stay consistent.
So Trina, are we budgeting like 3% above what we did in 2024 for 2025?
3% less. So the last
I
year's,
know, but compared to what we actually did, looks like we actually did 4.8 and we're budgeting, or 4.9, and we're budgeting 5.1. So,
Oh, that was probably based on in the year-to-date estimate. Is that right?
Now, if you go back and look at our revenues, it ended up being 4.9, and why we wouldn't be about the same?
Because we have to approve our budget based on what we think it's going to be, is that?
right, so in
Oh.
July, we
so
were,
it's not based on it, but it looks
based
like
on-
it's 150,000 or so
Yeah.
more than what we actually did last year.
yes. So that was the early budget set, and where it actually landed is,
Less than.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good.
good question.
So when we're saying we're less than 3%, we're not less than 3% actual, we're just less than 3% for what we predicted.
For
at
the
this
budget,
time.
correct.
Good clarification.
Okay, so your next revenue down is your interest income, and this is both for operations and revenue bonds. Total budget is 901,000, and we were anticipating a 4% return on cash and investments. But for the first time in 4 years, the Feds cut the rates in October by 50 basis points, making the target range between 4.75 and 5%. And then again, last week they cut another 25 basis points. So right now the Feds are at 4.5 to 4.75. All your investments we're holding right now are averaging about 5.02%. So we're above the Fed rate right now, and we're holding until maturity in 25. All of your investments will mature in 25. And we just recently bought a new investment at the very last day of October for $2 million. Just trying to tie up some more funds. That's $7 million total you have invested. And I kind of wanted to, lag them, but I couldn't find anything with good rates, and then just depending on projects, just kind of where it landed. But we will definitely be watching to see if we can slide in with some good rates and hold them for a good year or so.
So, but you're saying that we annualized at 4%, so we're actually doing better than what we budgeted for.
Correct.
Okay.
We knew the market was going to drop eventually. We've been earning 5.5%, some things close to 6%, but just a little over time, it's going to get down there. Okay, down to your expenditure section, you have supplies and miscellaneous budget of $650, training budget of $10,000, legal services of $10,000, and then your city of Kerrville admin contract for $213,000 this year. That was a 4% increase over last year. So that'd be $17,000 per month. KEDC contract is a quarterly payment of $85,000, and that did not have an increase over last year. And then down for your debt service, this year you're looking at $2,559,000, with $213,000 going out each month for those allocations. For October, we did make that $2 million commercial paper purchase, and that will mature in July of 2025. And then down to your project section. So, for your operational funds, the downtown streetscape has remaining funds of 69,000. Travis Pump Station had expenses incurred in October of 6,100. Habitat, we have been paying out payments to them almost on a monthly basis, so this month was 113,000. And let's see, yeah, Schreiner University is going to be on there for their first year contribution of 1.5 million. And then Lennar Wind Ridge has been added to the list, and just see when that takes off. I think I have them on the cash flow for towards the end of the year for 2 million. And then, of course, all your bond-funded projects are listed out here. Some will close out this year, and some will roll into fiscal year 26, obviously. So golf course this month expensed out close to 215,000, and then the Olympic pool was 16,000.
What
So-
are we, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, finish up what you're saying.
I was just going to give you a net change in position of a negative 2,162,000, and obviously the majority of that is your investment we purchased.
So when we have a project that's complete, like the downtown streetscape, that's complete, correct? I mean, we're done with that. We've got 69,000 sitting on our books. What do we do about that? How does,
It just rolls back into your available cash. That we're only transferring out as you spend, so you're still holding on to it at the moment.
Out and the project's complete, and then
yeah, do we move that in the number? Do we, once the project's complete, does that reflect in the next budget once it's closed out? Or does it just sit there for the remainder of the year, where it is?
well, so I mean, it's what's budgeted and what's left in that budget, right? And so it won't
It won't change.
change.
It'll
There won't
sit
be an
there.
expense. There's not going to be any actuals, provided I don't have any actuals for that project, and so that'll roll off the list of expenses, and it'll just be $70,000 less in your expense.
But we could add it back to a cash balance, right, to see what our cash balance was.
Correct.
That's what, I mean.
It's still there in your cash balance right now.
Oh,
Because we
yeah.
haven't transferred out.
Sure, okay, makes sense.
You don't get it twice. Yeah,
You can always ask.
you can. That's true.
I was doing some good kind of accounting.
Yeah, it's a good
See where y'all are trying to go.
Hey, Trina, going back to the tax pool rate, shows 5.44%. Was that the actual daily rate as of the end of October?
No, it's 5%. Yeah, I found that yesterday, so I got it changed. It was right at 5% tax pool at the end
That's
of
more
October.
like what I would have expected.
I've got a question. The project list here, some of those projects are funded through the bond, some of them are not.
Yes, sir.
Makes it a little bit confusing to look at this and to figure out where the money is coming from our general fund or from that bond fund. Is there
Okay.
any way to separate those
Yep.
out so that we can see it that
Or
way?
just like another chart to follow,
Or just have the first,
Just,
you know,
yeah.
separate them
or
by
just
Yeah,
in
top and
order?
bottom.
just in order.
Yeah. I can
Because it's all
separate the
finished
projects.
together
Oh,
right
that's a
there, that
good
would be a little
idea.
bit more clear.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Yes, sir. All right, any further questions on statement of activities? All right, on to cash flow, and this is pretty much what you're used to. So first column there is the summation of what's happened this fiscal year so far. Ending cash balance is 22,108,000, and that is both operational funds and bond funds. Columns to the right are your remaining fiscal year 25 projections, and you can see your cash balances are pretty healthy, but it will significantly drop off come towards the year end, but obviously projects will be heavy and going. We will monitor cash flow, make sure we know where we're at and what we have available. We'll probably go ahead and start extending it into 26 so that you can clearly see what, if something comes up, where you're at. All right, and then financial analysis. So yes, here's your projects. I can separate those out, what's operational bond funded there. And then over to the right are your sales tax comparisons, fiscal year actuals and budget estimates. And then there on the bottom is your cash analysis. So this chart has your updated percentage rates. So 28 million for everything you're holding. That's liquid cash, and then your short-term investments.
Can't believe we're still not making sales tax.
Yep. So it's just starting out wonky here. 1 million. All right, and that's all I have. Any questions?
Oh, I have a question. At one point in time, you did like a 5-year projection for us,
Yes, ma'am.
and it had some incorrect numbers on it, and you were gonna redo it for us. Could we have that for December?
Was it Granger, McDonald, and Heart of the Hills, I think,
Mhm.
would need to update. Yes, ma'am, I can do that. It's already done, but I can provide it to you.
Yeah, we'd like to see, I mean, I think just like to see kind of what's happening out there over the next 5 years, so we know.
Okay. I will tell you that we looked at it, and it's getting tight. If sales tax doesn't keep, if it doesn't perform, and with the projects we have on the books. But I think in our cash flow, we already had built in some future project dollars to, that are plugged, 2 million, 1 million per year, so that may help out.
Roll into the Go Team review. I want to keep that on everybody's minds, like what our budget balances are going to be, and we'll get you all that, because we are still continuing to get requests. So we get requests from the community, and that's kind of where it gets a little interesting in the conversations right now, because requests from businesses, they can come in a lot of forms: reimbursements, 380 agreements, all that kind of stuff. The quality of life stuff that'll come from the groups out there in the community, nonprofit groups or whomever, those are usually in the form of cash, right? And so where your balance sits, and so we'll talk about it more when we talk about the Go Team.
Other questions about the finances? Thank you. All right, unless there are any questions about Lennar, I'll say that we covered that earlier. Any other questions from the board about that? Then we are gonna move on to Mr. Rice, item 5B.
All right. Good morning, Chair, members of the board. Hope everybody's doing well this evening. I've narrowed this down to only an hour and 15-minute presentation, so we'll get through this as quickly as possible.
Well, we don't want to break precedent.
Don't want to break, no. No, really, in all honesty, I want this to be very quick. I mostly want this to kind of be open for discussion. This is kind of a two-pronged approach. One, to kind of talk through very high level what some of City Council's objectives are from their recent council retreat, and how those kind of played into their 1 and 2 year work plan. And then want to kind of talk about some ideas that we have to kind of to tackle council's objectives, while kind of playing into the role of excuse me, of EDC, and how that plays into the larger landscape. So wanted to just real quick talk about the budget high level. Our theme is Beyond Tomorrow. That's what we kind of picked for many reasons. One is, what's the next step? What are we looking for? How do we plan for sustainability? What's our next goals? And so everything we're kind of doing and have planned for in this budget really focuses on what's next, whether that's keeping momentum, building sustainability, starting to plan for tomorrow, and really trying to take a proactive approach to what the future looks like. So sorry if this is small, but during the council retreat, they came up with 6 priorities. Even though there's 8 key priority areas, these are straight from the comprehensive 2050 plan. We'll call it the current one. It's currently being updated now, but don't anticipate too much changes. Priority 4 was economic development, and the reason why these are out of order, these were based off of the dots and the matrices that council and our team, our senior leadership team, put together to come up with some of the things that they feel are important. There's a full list of all the priorities, but I really just wanted to focus on the economic development priorities. Each one of these, from E4, E3, et cetera, and so forth, all play into bigger action items. So that can go drill down another step or two further. Don't want to dive into the details of these, but if you have questions, please ask. I got the book, and we can kind of talk through some of it. But again, a lot of these are not just EDC's focus, but these are city council priorities, which will have a regional impact as well. So this is kind of we'll call it proposal or discussion that I want to bring up tonight, is looking at bringing on an economic development manager under the city umbrella. ultimately what this would do is it would identify and keep both the Economic Development Corporation as a separate 501c6 as it currently states. They're going to operate, and focus on the things that EDC needs to focus on. And they'll be having, really for what they're really good at doing is having that regional support, from the Child Care Summits to the Texas Venture Fest to really having the hand in the state cookie jar, really all the things that the mission of the EDC does. City of Kerrville, while it's not heavily known, we actually do have an economic development division kind of under the city umbrella already. Michael Hornis was actually hired on by EA Hoppy to tackle some of the economic development. Megan Folkerts at the time, which was a management analyst, was kind of tackling the Main Street and the downtown stuff. Kind of show a SWOT analysis here in a second. And one of the challenges was some of the city priorities took over, which then kind of diluted Megan's role down and spread it more over the city, and it kind of lost sight of the economic development side versus focusing on the economic development side. Focus more on the city piece. And really what we're trying to identify here in collaboration, not just with here, but anything we talk about, we're two separate entities, but there's going to be overlap in common goals. And we feel that based off of City Council's objectives and the priorities, that overlap is business retention and expansion. The Chamber of Commerce has, over 800 plus members. They're anticipating over 1,000 members, pretty much come, I think, Q1 of next year, if I remember Mindy correctly. And that's a lot of business retention and expansion. And when we really look at BRE, I think how do we define it? Do we define it as the mom and pops, the local businesses, the small retail? Seen an article recently that, retail is some of our largest, paying supporters to the sales tax base. But then you also have the primary jobs. And we say the primary jobs, the primary companies, the top employers, of the organization. And the way I kind of looking at this, just one observation from the outside looking in from the EDC perspective, also from the city side, as far as how do we support each other in both of our missions and visions, is if EDC on the BRE side kind of continues to focus on what they're focusing on with the higher, top employers per se, keep the hand in the state cookie jar, work with the office of the governor, work with the state EDC office, focus on those regional components, then the city takes on the BRE from the small businesses, the small mom and pop places. How do we prevent stuff like Broken Stone Pizza, for example, that needed to find a new building, but we didn't have the inventory or we didn't have the knowledge of it? So we want to really ultimately define what BRE is, and from the city side, we feel it would be best with the priority 4 and priority 6 for council to tackle not just the city's portion of BRE, but have an emphasis of downtown, Main Street, and work in direct collaboration with economic development. And that's, I think, the key is we want to be able to tackle this from two fronts. One, from the standpoint of working with the EDC from the inside out, but also have the EDC be able to kind of tackle projects from the outside in. And so we want this to be a collaboration, not a dilution of efforts. So kind of going into the SWOT analysis, on the strength side, unified strategic direction, I do feel from the city manager side there is a gap between some EDC functions, even though we do sit on the board. There is some of that disconnect where the EDC is focused on the regional side of things, where the city is trying to focus on some of the more local side. How do we bring our forces together to have a unified strategic direction? Leverage of city resources. We do feel that going this direction, we really as a city can kind of help support some of the finances side, or doing financial statements, working through them, cutting out some unnecessary expenses, number one, but also leveraging some of the city resources such as our communications and marketing department as well, booklets, really just having an entire city team, being able to kind of support the initiative from the inside out. Improved decision making, again, it really just kind of goes back to collaboration. We can tie that up and do a lot. Opportunities, we keep talking about keeping the momentum. EDC is kind of in a current, change right now. If y'all didn't know, Katie is the interim executive director for the EDC since Gil, have left. She's doing a wonderful job at it. And so we want to keep that momentum going. Stronger public-private partnerships. I've heard a lot of folks talk about P3s. Again, this just helps kind of, while it does bring bureaucracy into it to a certain extent, it also helps us be able to collaborate together on how we can navigate some of those bureaucratic obstacles. Access to broader funding streams. This is kind of one I wanted to at least throw in there. where just having more people be able to look at this, how do we tackle grants? How do we see what else, what other funding is available? How do we help the EDC in a way dive into some new funding streams while at the same time focusing on council's objectives? Streamline economic development efforts. Again, opportunity kind of ties in on how we can just continue to communicate and collaborate. And I wanted to add stakeholder commitment. And honestly, this probably should have been either the top one or even maybe one below it. But stakeholder commitment. There's been a lot of buzz on things that are going to happen. This is not the forum, to discuss that. But how do we continue to show both from the EDC side, but also from the city side, that we value our stakeholders, we want the stakeholders to be informed, and we kind of want to know how we can tackle both the city side, which is what I'm here for, and then also the economic development side, which is more of the regional focus. Weaknesses, again, so I kind of shifted this proposal, so I'm only showing the, we'll call it iteration 3 or 2.5, if you will. Perception of bureaucracy, again, when you start working for a city, you run into the issues of people think you're dealing with some bureaucratic red tape, which again is why keeping EDC as a separate entity, but collaborating and working together is important. Loss of identity, we don't want, and we just have to be aware of it and be deliberate about it. We don't want any of those roles to be confused. Again, I have the council's objectives that I got to kind of tackle. How do I do that? But also, how do we make sure we take care of the regional focus as well? Role confusion, kind of same thing with loss of identity. We want to make sure that we keep that. Stakeholder resistance, I kind of heard varying degrees of this. Making sure that we are doing it for the right reasons. I think the other side of this is trying to keep the momentum. Will this improve stakeholder commitment? I think this is that opportunity that kind of offsets some of the threats. Dilution of mission, this is an important one that we have to be deliberate on the implementation of this and making sure that, we're not, while we have that overlap, we don't want to dilute each other's respective responsibilities and missions in that. And I think that's pretty easy to do. We can work through that. Political influence, while this is also a threat, I think by going this direction, it also is an opportunity. It helps us kind of provide some of that political umbrella or overhead, if you will, on trying to reduce some of the negative political influence that can kind of permeate, organizations, and how do we maintain stability and sustainability for the long term. Threats, reduce flexibility. I wanted to leave this one on there. I kind of went back and forth on it. I think this does add some flexibility, and I think there could be some times where it reduces some of the flexibility. So again, things that we just have to kind of talk through.
Can I ask one question on that
Yes.
slide? So are stakeholders, are you calling that the businesses that you're helping, or those who the stakeholders are?
So stakeholders, very broad term, from the businesses that we're helping to the boards, such as EIC, the chamber, CVB, anybody and everybody that can benefit really from the economic development side, whether you're on the EDC board, whether you're, separate from anybody who's kind of doing business I would consider kind of a stakeholder in this, but really stakeholder was been identified as mostly as the boards and kind of the businesses involved. Great question.
Dalton, can you talk a little bit about, as a community, our current appetite for continuing to focus on bringing in new companies that are creating new primary jobs, and then secondarily, under this sort of a setup, who would own primary responsibility for the recruiting and dealing with those companies as they're coming in?
Yeah, great question. I think that's kind of, it is a two-part question, but to answer your first part, the business retention expansion piece and the new primary jobs piece is really, it's kind of a blended role. So for example, James Avery, they moved out some operations down to Corpus Christi to the tune of about 750 jobs. We couldn't sustain the workforce, we didn't have the housing, and so that was kind of a loss. So while it's an existing business, even the International Economic Development Corporation identifies BRE, and I think Katie had kind of mentioned it as well, the BRE side does impact the primary jobs. And so to answer your second question, we want EDC to be that sole focus on, we'll call it the larger companies, the ones that are still going to be developing primary jobs in the next, 3, 5, and 10 years. To include, keeping the leads with the state, excuse me, keeping the leads with the state, keeping the hand in the officer, of the governor's in the economic development office, We want them to be that sole focus. We agree that that is not, something really the city should have to take on. Since again, our focus is more of the local side, we do feel that the benefit of EDC being the 501c6 that it is to focus on the regional component, regional and higher, I should say. Did I answer your question?
Yes, I think so. Okay, let's talk about budget and how something like this could potentially impact KEDC's budget. I know you've talked with stakeholders kind of one-on-one. Do you anticipate that doing something like this would threaten KEDC's current funding structure?
Great, another great question. And, I was talking with Katie and I told, I spoke with her yesterday, and if she has any comments on it, I told her, please speak up. I've actually kind of shifted the slide a little bit, and I wanted to change tones. Not change tones, but change kind of approaches. I wanted to open this up for discussion because, it could be a great idea, and we wanted to see where the funding could be. Could this be a project that that EIC does find beneficial, that maybe they don't want to pull funding or discuss, opportunities to pull funding from it? Right now, out of the 550,000, we'll say 2/3 of it comes from either EIC funding or the city funding, with two separate $68,750 revenue streams from KPUB and from the county respectively. And so really, I think going into this as kind of the proposal and the streamline effort is we really wanted to open up discussion to see what the EIC has an appetite for. We wanted to take the positive out of it and first off say, do we feel that this is a good approach? Is this an approach that EIC, would want to partner with the city on to, potentially fund a position? What would the funding look like? And kind of go from there. So I kind of shifted tune instead of saying, to rob Peter to pay Paul, let's take that off the table and say, let's just look at it, the concept for what it is, and then kind of go from there, if this is an idea.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes, ma'am.
It's a selfish suggestion. I need to take a quick break. Are you what I'd like is if you can incorporate any of your final thoughts for us to consider, and then just take a quick 5-minute as all. I don't want to be here all night. I want to get us out of here.
Yes.
But just quick 5 minutes, and we shouldn't discuss them with each other, but if you could write down a list of questions. This is a lot to take in a short period of time, and it may be confusing, and it may be clear, and it may be somewhere in between. So if you want to wrap up, and we can take a quick break.
I'm wrapped up, ma'am. So
you're good
I'm good to
where
go.
you are?
So we're at a great
Okay.
stopping point. This is the last slide, and Greg kind of led into it of just wanted to open it up, and we can talk about it after.
Okay. Is everybody okay with just 5 minutes max? Let's just, okay, all right.
Sweet.
So we're temporarily adjourned.
that last slide back up?
There it is,
Thank you.
okay. Oh, wait, let me wait till, okay. All right, we're back. We just left off with Mr. Rice kind of going through council priorities and how that might look, and a different role that the city might take in that. So I would like to, Greg, I don't know if you got your last question answered. Do you want to go back? Let's go back to that. Did you,
Talking about
Yeah, about,
budget
yeah.
funding.
okay, and there was and the answer was?
In the perfect world, looking at it through the lens of the good, the bad, and the ugly, I wanted to reframe it and just not bring up the bad if there's other options on the table. I'm a solutions guy. So I wanted to bring the concept forward, basically saying we can talk about that, whether that's, hey, do we want to reappropriate some funding, from EIC in the city to fund this position? Or does EIC feel that this is an important one, project where, hey, maybe they want to allocate some additional funding to support this, or, kind of go back to the drawing board. I didn't want to just throw one negative one out there. I wanted to kind of leave it open for the group to discuss this.
Okay, so I have two follow-up questions. One is, are you suggesting that the city's economic development manager, or at least a portion of the cost thereof, would be funded by EIC separate from what we're already doing for EDC? I guess I'll just stop. That's question one.
That's one, I think that's one proposal, or that's one option.
Then the other question, I guess, is, having this person at the city, do you expect that's going to change the city's willingness to continue to fund its portion of KEDC's budget?
Potentially, depending on the direction that EIC kind of wants to go. So I don't know, because yes, it only makes sense to potentially reappropriate funding, on the EDC side to kind of support the initiative through sales tax. It just kind of makes sense. But I really do think that kind of depends. If EIC, just as an example, is like, nah, we don't want to pull funding, we don't want to do this. Again, I have to talk to council at that point, and really I'm bringing kind of all of this to EIC and EDC way before council, because council's kind of separate in all of this for many different reasons. But to answer your question directly, yes, that could be a potential option.
Okay, so just, I'm sorry, you had a second question.
No, I'm good for now.
Real quick.
Well, I guess, I appreciate the idea of kind of leaving this open for discussion. In some ways, that makes me feel a little bit confused. And one of the things that you said was it depends on if EIC wants to do this or not. Who is the driver on this? Like, I mean, how is this all, with all of these different players?
Yeah, so this driver is strictly from me as a city manager, kind of looking at council's objectives and what they've done, the economic development component to that, and how do we best utilize resources from the city side to tackle council's objectives as far as the economic development.
Sure, no, and I maybe to clarify more, I mean, are you saying that we're going to affect the direction that you're gonna take this back to council or KEDC, and how does it all, like, how do all the pieces fit together with all the stakeholders? Like
Very
this?
complicated.
Yeah.
So very, very complicated. So the initial kind of proposal on this was when I first kind of was looking at this, was to say, hey, would EIC, reduce some of the economic development contributions to fund a portion of this, and then the city use its economic development contributions to fund the other portion of this. And in a way, even though we'll call it a cash loss to the EDC, the gain would be in kind, because now this person would be full-time on city staff. So there's some in-kind things that would be able to materialize out of this. That was kind of the first initial one. Then I kind of started thinking, well, what if EIC likes this project? Instead of going into it negative about robbing Peter to pay Paul, would the EIC say, hey, we want to fund a portion of this on top of what we're already contributing to EDC? The most appropriate sense for us, and again, I don't know, I have to take this to council, before I do it, so I'm kind of speaking out of turn here for a second. Just one of the ideas is to use a portion of the city's contribution to the EDC to fund a portion of the salary. And so I think how we fund it is really what we're trying to, figure out. What is the best use of appropriating funds, whether that's existing funds or newly requested funds? Yes, ma'am.
And so what are you thinking the budget would be, and how does the 68,500 from KPUB and the 68,500 from the county, how does that all meld in with this?
So right now the budget is set or flat at 550,000. What ultimately we're requesting from, whether that's between the EIC and the city's contribution, is about $100,000. So we're kind of looking at the salary range, about 64 plus 30%, so about $85,000, give or take, with some extra in there to be able to use for budgeting or for operational expenses on this position. Whatever really portion comes from EIC or from the city, we're really anticipating about 100. Again, if there's not additional funding on top, the initial one was pulling $100,000 off of the contributions to EDC. But again, I didn't want to lead with that one. That's kind of we'll call it the bad, robbing Peter to pay Paul. And so we wanted to present the proposal to see if, EIC would potentially fund on top of. Yes, sir.
I think if we can, maybe we can talk a little bit more about the what instead of the how.
Yeah.
I mean, right now we're talking about the how. What I'm really more interested in is what are the different responsibilities between the EDC and this new economic development manager, and where do they? I know you cross them over in the BRE section. However, to me, the BRE is working with companies like my company and helping us to grow and add employees locally, smaller businesses more so than the big fish, like the Megacretes and things like that. Those, to me, are an EDC playing area. To me, if you're adding a person at the city, then those are the people that I can call up on a Wednesday and say, hey, can I schedule a meeting next week? We've got some plans we want to talk about.
And
is that what you're envisioning? And if the added combination of those two players together brings us a greater good, I think the EIC would support that. I can't speak from everybody, but just thinking of it from that direction as opposed to where's the money going to come from.
Correct, and that's kind of, and again, I talked to some of the stakeholders, initially just about the different ones. So this is why proposal, we'll call it 2.5, came out, where I've left that off. I just wanted to kind of provide some context of where it kind of started and where the approach to this was very different. So to answer your question, yes, that is the goal. That is what we want this position to do. We want it to be the face-to-face where Kyle can call up and say, hey, I want to talk to economic development, somebody at the city or who's doing the small business retail. But again, if that goes to Katie and then we want to have that joint collaboration where it's not siloed. And you can ask our team. Silos for me is one of my biggest pet peeves. And so we want to actually bridge the gap and build a bridge, that I think has, while we've had a relationship on the EDC board, we feel on the operational side there's a gap, and I think this person would fill that gap.
Well, I think, and I like the direction, Kyle. And you mentioned something in the question that you asked. You mentioned something that I just picked up on, which was retail development. And KEDC primarily is not focused on retail development because they were focusing on primary jobs. So is that another kind of aspect to what this would be? I mean, I remember when I was first on council, there was a retail study and things like that, and then nothing really ever developed out of
didn't materialize. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. And so yes, that this is another reason why it's not to take away from the EDC's core mission. It's to enhance. In my opinion, from the city side, an area that we can make some improvements. We don't want it to just be a phone call. We want it to have that face-to-face relationship, that relationship with our small businesses.
It feels like this is still very early in the process, and there's not really clear roles and responsibilities defined at this point. So what are you wanting from us today?
Really just kind of, thoughts on, do we feel like this is a good direction that EIC potentially could get some teeth behind, get some suggestions to see if there's a proposal, 3, or how that, this has already evolved a couple times since, when I first kind of, was talking about it. Really just kind of get some advice and wisdom from EIC on some of the direction that y'all think would be attainable.
One comment Have you been giving any thought to maybe making this economic development manager just a part of the EDC? And ask all the relevant stakeholders to increase funding to fund that position there, instead of creating a whole new city department?
Yes, sir, but where from a city manager side and where I would disagree is I think that's where the dilution would come back in and the city would kind of lose the identity of what it's trying to accomplish, because then it would tie into the major EDC function, because it is separate and they do have a regional focus. If the EDC wants to tackle, the local small business, BRE stuff, I mean, I think that, that could be done also. But I think there is some value by making it kind of a hybrid system. But yes, I think they could, but from a city side, I would probably be opposed to it, just because I feel that we would lose sight of some of the council objectives, because the EDC has its own regional focus or its own board.
We talked about the what and the how. I want to talk a minute about the why.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I think what I'm hearing you say is the primary focus of this person would be on business retention and expansion geared towards smaller local businesses and retail, including retail. Is that primarily, because I know that's been something that KEDC has worked on, but maybe not to the extent of business recruitment has been. And I just want to clarify that's kind of the primary objective with this.
Yes, sir. Primary objective is to bring that person on to, again, focus on the retail, BRE business side. Not to take away from EDC's primary goal. I think that's where some of the confusion came in, is when we say BRE, I think each one of us has a different definition of what BRE is. And so my observations as a city manager, kind of, seeing the EDC side of it, is they're focused, and should be rightfully so, on the bigger jobs, the mega creates, the Killdeers, those folks, where we can then take on the smaller side of it. So it is to separate it, but have those clearly defined roles. They are doing a great job at BRE. It's just that BRE is a very specific focus.
Do you see BRE being the focus? Because you mentioned some other things, but even in the retail sector, it's not just BRE. There is recruitment as well.
There is going to be it's kind of, we're tying BRE into everything from either the recruitment side. EDC is not finding restaurants to come in. Really, that would be Michael Horness and this manager kind of on the ICSC side. So it's a completely different mission set, different conferences, really different scope. This person from a more city-specific side, where again funding would be proportionate to this, is they would kind of tackle some of the Main Street Advisory Board, the TERS board. So they're going to be liaisons to a substantial amount of stakeholders in the group, to again build those relationships and bring all those together. So we're talking about mostly from the economic development side, but from a city economic development side, this person's going to be heavily involved in downtown stuff, relationship building, outside of the downtown, TERS related projects, Main Street. So this is really just the economic development, side to it. So it's going to be a pretty robust, which is why we're looking at a manager position versus a coordinator position. Yes, ma'am.
So at the Arcadia event, you had both downtown and Nimitz Lake development, like business development. Is that going to be a part of this as well, or is it all going to be really focused on the downtown?
No, absolutely not just focused on the downtown. This is going to be even though this position is going to be for city council objectives, we all still know, being a county seat, there's still a regional play, at here. So we're not just trying to isolate it from a negative standpoint. We're just trying to enhance, what city council is wanting to get done. So no, it is not strictly just the downtown. This is going to be for collaboration on city limits and the region, in support of EDC, not against EDC. And so to answer your question on the why, so where the why kind of came about is, in Gil left a great legacy on it and brought in a lot of, he really got the momentum going for EDC. What we want to do is keep that momentum going. And so whether that's through exactly what we're kind of doing now or finding ways to always improve our position. And I think this was a great hybrid, a balance between keeping that EDC's focus and the mission on what they're doing and how they're doing it and why they're doing it, and then bringing on another in-kind portion from the city side to enhance what they're doing, and then bring another component into the city to tackle council's objectives. And in a kind of a unique way, you know, I mean, I won't dive too much into it, but there is political volatility. There is, you know, some funding volatility that we have yet realized and we may never realize. But trying to stay proactive on it and anticipating some of these things is we want to work together with these. And I've already gotten some unofficial kind of commitments, you know, from some of the stakeholders that were potentially kind of hesitant that, you know, if there was some, you know, positive shift in it, that they would keep funding with no issues.
Would this position work at all with developers that were looking to bring in new projects that would, retail developers, or I know that's not maybe quite the same thing as working with a small business owner, but still could affect bringing in the kinds of businesses that the community needs?
Yes, because, you know, really from this standpoint, and I'm going to use, you know, different restaurants, this person would be the one to kind of identify some of those, you know, restaurants or building the relationship, you know, with it. So that's where that partnership still exists between EDC and the city, is while they might be looking at some, you know, bigger primary jobs, the collaboration is during her, you know, or during EDC's kind of BRE programming. If James Avery's like, man, we have the workforce, we have this, but, you know, we're starting to see we need more restaurants or we need more of that. Now it's kind of that partnership on how do we, you know, go to ICSC or go to conferences. And that's really actually Michael Hornis's forte. He was actually brought on to do the economic development side, you know, before it kind of waned off. And the reason why we want EIC commitment versus just kind of going at it with the city side is we want to lock that into the sales tax side. We're seeing a 3% decrease in sales tax. So what can we do on another front to try to tackle some of this and get an ROI? And we don't want it to just get absorbed into the city's bureaucracy where our other priorities take over. We want to lock this in with an agreement with EIC to say, look, this person is for economic development. And, you know, Dalton Rice can't just say, hey, I want them as a secretary now to do something else. We want to make it a committed position to economic development BRE.
Are you able to set any kind of goals or any kind of metrics for us to be able to, I feel like I just need a little bit more meat on this plate for us to be able to digest.
I feel like this is gonna be very difficult to explain to the public or justify it. I'm not being negative, but I'm having trouble already, and I know I have trouble explaining it to the public.
Yeah, we can definitely work as far as metrics right now. I mean, the only thing I can really speak to is, you know, when we look at, you know, the BRE numbers on, you know, what EDC presented at, you know, 54, Chamber has over 800 members. I don't know if you've been contacted by, you know, by folks or not. Again, it's a process. So I don't think I really have the metrics to really kind of show what this is capable of yet, but I think there's the metrics there that are kind of pointing us in the right direction of saying this is an opportunity that we can look at to try to bridge the gap and kind of create some balance in it.
And I want to give y'all my perspective. When I first heard about this, I was immediately like, this is ridiculous. KEDC has made all these strides and they've, you know, done all of these things, and now the city's going to come and take this over. And, you know, I was ticking off all the reasons why. I just, you know, thought that it was the wrong thing to do. I felt pretty strongly about that. And I don't know, I you know, Dalton and I met, and by the time he and I met, he had already kind of changed that direction a little bit. And you, in that meeting, kind of answered and spoke to, it was like you kind of maybe had heard it from other people, but it spoke to a lot of the things that I had in my head as questions and problems. And while I appreciate very much the presentation today and wanting to get the feedback from EIC, I also think that, you know, in the meeting between the two of us, I felt like I got that direction from you, and I felt a little more confused by today's meeting, maybe that, because you're wanting it to be more open, but That's just that's what I'm feeling.
Okay.
You know, is that, you know, having a sense of that direction helped me in that conversation with you a little bit, speaking to the confusion part of it.
Dalton,
Yes, sir.
obviously in the state of Texas, a lot of cities and counties do similar things to what we're doing, what we're trying to do.
We
you
lost the
know-
previous director to a city that was structured that way.
Sure. Do you know of anywhere where this type of setup is working well? So maybe you could illustrate some successes, or
So
that might be helpful selling it to some folks that are maybe hesitant.
yeah, so we are a very unique city from a standpoint of we have an EIC that has a separate EDC. A lot of cities, the sales tax goes directly to the EDC, and then the EIC equivalent would hire the executive director, and the full funding would be the full $5 million. So somewhere along the line, the city broke off and had an EDC above and beyond the EIC, and so that's what kind of makes our city actually very unique. One of the initial proposals was to potentially roll the staff of the EDC into the city, which I think was what sparked a lot of some of the, questions of bureaucracy, is this the right thing, kind of that takeover mentality. And so that's why we kind of pivoted away from that. So this is kind of a creative birth child, if you will, of trying to wrap and tackle both objectives, both of the EDC and also of city council.
Trying to get to, so are you suggesting that 1 + 1 is gonna get us to a 3? If you add this position plus the EDC together they can create a greater value than just having that person be at EDC? Help me understand, so that's what I'm trying to get to, is where's the win here? What are we gaining?
So we're gaining, one, we'd be gaining a staff member into the city side. EDC doesn't have to follow council's objectives. While the 2050 plan, we use it, they're not, bound by it. The board doesn't necessarily have to be bound by it. They're going to have their own objectives that go beyond the council objectives. This position ultimately is there to focus on council's objectives, which is, just another component of the economic development, side. So this kind of tackles not just what council's objective is, just hiring for the sake of hiring, but I think it does enhance. I'm not a math guy. I don't know if 1 + 1 can be 3, but it sounds good. But I think it does enhance what we're trying to do, both from the EDC side and their mission and vision and goals to city council's side and their mission, vision, and goals. And I think by having that collaboration in there, we are able to create something, I think, a little bit more robust and I think sustainable.
And there's the missing piece too. I keep using the word retail, but it's specifically not just BRE, but recruitment. EDC is not going to ever take that on unless they change their direction. And ever since I've ever heard of KEDC, it's been primary jobs, and we're not dealing with, the $15 hour retail jobs.
Yeah.
And we're, wanting to export and import money from outside the community. And so I don't know if there's anyone right now that's a designated position anywhere that's really focusing on any of that retail recruitment as well as business.
No, and a great example of this is the Landing. That's just one example that's, outside of, or that's in, in our region, and they're wanting to kind of make it a mixed use. That's going to be where Granger McDonald Park is, and, the Guadalupe River Center. So that's a great example where those in a way for an EDC, that's small potatoes. That's one area that we keep talking about on trying to help them find, hey, how do we recruit businesses into it? Because really, even though the Landing is vacant land, we're kind of considering it redevelopment because the infrastructure's under there being used. And so trying to find businesses or, putting together concepts and working together, that's, again, one of the many duties this position would kind of roll into, is that retail, but the recruiting side and the BRE side, kind of that balance of both.
I would be much more likely to support this if you guys could guarantee that the YO Hotel on the end of the hills would do substantial renovations and we get another flagged hotel here, brand new.
So I will say about the YO, from my understanding is the folks that bought it own the Minger Hotel in San Antonio. And so hopefully we see something, but yeah, obviously I can't guarantee anything, but I mean, that's a great
I
example.
mean, is that an example of something
Yeah,
that this
so like, for
person would
example,
work on,
Michael and I-
hospitality? Because obviously we have a huge need for that here.
Yeah, so Michael and I we've actually been, talking with quite a few, hoteliers and, looking at flags. I mean, it got to a point to where we thought we were going to come to EIC to potentially purchase a flag, to hold it. So yes, those are things that we are, talking pretty heavily internally on, that by adding this person, we'll be able to continue that momentum with that. So that's all I got. Like I said, planting the seed, for right now. We do have some time to kind of figure this out, and what this could look for. If you got questions, please give me a call, reach out. Yes,
One
ma'am.
more, will you be coming back with a specific ask from the EIC?
I can. So I guess kind of gauging EIC's interest, if there is something, potential on what y'all would want to see, then that's kind of, yes, we can come back with a specific ask. I guess my question for that would be is, with this project, do y'all want to see kind of above and beyond what we're contributing, to EDC, a combination thereof, or kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly, and making an a la carte menu?
I think this is a lot to take in. Personally, I'm not sure I could answer that question at this
I
moment,
think what
but
I need to see is what's the job description of this person gonna look like? What are their goals? What are your, and I know that if I can read between the lines about what you're telling us today, you want the city to have a person that you can give marching orders to go off and accomplish economic development tasks that the city council has specified.
Yes.
And you right now don't have that control because they don't work for you.
I just don't have the bandwidth, and they have different mission sets. So
You don't have a person.
I don't have a person.
Right. Gotcha.
Yes. So
And I
not
think-
necessarily about control, but just different mission sets.
Well, no, just having the
Yeah.
resources, right?
Having the resources.
And I think this board, generally speaking, we want to do whatever's the best thing for the community. And if that's finding another $100,000 here or there, it's irrelevant to us if that $100,000 is well spent and it gets us to achieve the goals that the city is after.
We can definitely provide that.
So I think to clarify this all down to that, I think if you come back to us next time, it needs to be a little more clear about what their job is and what this person's job is and how they can work together to achieve those goals better.
Yeah, and where some of the confusion also kind of, I'd say, comes in is I'm trying to speak just from the side of the city, right? I'm trying not to blend the EDC board, the stuff, going on there. So I'm trying to keep it very one-sided because I'm only up here as a city manager, not as an EDC board member. And so that does kind of create, some of those weird optics. But I think as we go through this, we can definitely kind of make sure that partnership is there and speak to both sides. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you all.
so I guess we'll wait, but it sounds like if everyone's in agreement that maybe we have a second discussion about this with some delineation and some clarification on
Yeah, we
roles.
can do that.
And I think that's a good idea. And then that gives us more to discuss as far as, do we reallocate funds? Do we want to add on top of those funds? Or effectively, is the new split between EDC and EIC, not split, I shouldn't say
Yeah.
split, but changing the roles and adding a role, does that mean that EDC now is tasked with less, and so maybe we do reallocate? But so once we see what those roles and responsibilities are, then
Okay.
I think, as Kyle said, that'll give a pretty clear picture as to how this board wants to allocate their
And I'd like to
financial
hear
resources.
EDC's perspective on it, honestly.
Yes.
And I know that's a baited question right now, Katie, but
Yeah.
it feels like this is treading on your territory a little. So is that how it feels? How does it feel to you?
Thank you for asking. I'm going to keep my comments brief just because our board is looking forward to a retreat in the beginning of 2025, and I look forward to receiving more direction from them specifically. With that said, I do think that if you take a look at the assets that we have in our community that support BRE, either directly or indirectly, from Chambers of Commerce, Main Street Advisory Board, there's quite a few different organizations that serve, that touch the BRE in a variety of capacities. And I think it perhaps is like chicken restaurants. The demand is there.
We'll bring all of them in.
Yeah, bars, chicken restaurants, and.
So I'm happy,
Restaurants.
once my board provides me with more direction, I'm happy to share that with you then.
And I know, Mayor Blackburn, you kind of came to listen. Do you have any comments that you would want to share?
I just briefly say, economic development in our community has been very important for me for years. Served years ago, I was talking to Beck about this, on the KDF board, when there were 40 of us on the board under the chamber, and we were not very effective. And then as mayor, I served on the KDC board and was involved in bringing Gil here and supporting that move. And just delight in what I've seen in recent years out of KDC. I do understand the whole issue of business retention and expansion. Small businesses across our country are struggling for a lot of reasons. And so that, wherever we go, I think that's got to be a very important part of this picture. And I do hope, whatever is done, we keep KEDC strong.
I think so too.
Thank you. Any final comments before we move on tonight?
No.
Okay, thank you. All right, I want to thank Michael Hornes, Mike Hayes, and Celeste for getting us to the place we are now with the Go Team. Celeste did a really good job of kind of capturing our notes and comments from the meeting on the Go Team. I did send the draft of the Go Team document to the two recent applicants that, had a few questions along the way that, and I have not received comment back from them yet. So, or maybe not at all, but anyway, that was that draft that should incorporate the comments and clarifications to Go Team makeup procedures was given to you in your packet. Were there any changes from the time that the packet was issued until now? I can't remember.
No.
No further changes?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right, so that is, was there a copy at our places? Okay.
No, but I can go print some out for
No,
you guys.
it's okay. I mean, does anybody feel like they want to review a copy?
I can look at mine.
Okay. I feel like for the purpose of what I remember us discussing for my personal confusion and purposes of clarifying the things that were unclear and taking out things that were unnecessary and clarifying some procedures which we discussed being who makes the first touch with an applicant, what does the Go Team makeup look like, do we want to call a public hearing at the same time that we bring forward a agreement on the same meeting. We left that open-ended. We clarified that the Go Team is going to be made up of a city manager or designee, KEDC director or designee appointed Go Team member, and then others as needed.
EIC board member and a
Right,
KDC
EIC
board
Go
member.
Team board member, correct. And then if there is a project that would be looked at as something that would need to be a person brought in because it reflects a certain sector that could happen. Also, we can hold a public hearing and we can have an agreement at the same time if that makes sense. A lot of times it won't. I think that, let me see, as soon as the Go Team makes its recommendation, the next available meeting. It's going to go to the applicant to make presentation rather than being kicked back to them. I think the idea of they can get the feedback from the Go team. We will get the feedback from the Go team at the meeting, and in between the time the applicant gets feedback from the Go team to the next meeting when they present, they can choose whether or not to incorporate any feedback from the Go team. But the Go team's looking at completion. They can give comment and feedback, but then the applicant's going to decide what to do with that. And EIC will ultimately decide what to do with applicants and Go team comments.
And do you think it makes sense to go back to the reason why we're having this discussion to begin with? So that the rest of the board knows why we're even talking about it? I don't know that everybody knows
Okay.
what the lead-in was. It was because of the Shriner application.
Well, we had two applicants that felt confused by the process. I think we put Michael in a very difficult situation, trying to act in the best interest of the city and EIC, and versus, because Michael was having to take on a lot of the responsibility before it even went to the Go team. And then, the applicant sometimes would feel like the feedback before going to the Go team was confusing, like which way do I go when I go to the quote Go team. So yeah, this is all to clarify that process for the applicants to take some of the burden off one individual person being kind of, held to trying to be the gatekeeper of everything.
Dr. No is what my wife calls me.
So.
Happy to do it if you need me to.
Well, I think that from my understanding, being the Go team representative, the goal of the Go team was to be an early filter, I guess, so to speak, so that when new applicants come in and they, in the case of this particular one, it was a really complex ask, a very complex project, a lot of detail, and they'd put a lot of time and effort into the presentation. And when it came before the Go team, it was so much that it would have taken us weeks to go through it all effectively. And our goal there was to then go back to the applicant and say, listen, we need you to simplify this down a little bit, talk to us in the way that, because we're talking about tax dollars here that are being used for the greater good. And we need to make sure it checks these boxes. And so when we sent that back to them for them to look at it, I think there was some confusion as to why they weren't coming to the EIC board to begin with. And the Go team was put in place just so that the city would have at least a couple of stakeholders to talk to. There's a county representative, an EIC representative, and there's supposed to be one other, I'm trying to remember.
Oh, and
EDC.
in consideration, you guys amended that, so it's, if it's county related, then we'll add the county to it.
Right. That's right.
Whatever we need at the table.
So if our goal here is to clarify more clearly to applicants what the purpose of the Go team is.
That's definitely a part of it.
I think that's probably one of the goals of this discussion. And the other is to make sure that we're doing it as best we can. And also not excluding the rest of the board in the process. So it would be my job as that representative for EIC to come back and report to you. These are the things that we had this conversation about, and fill everybody in so we don't all have to sit there and do that.
So to give them a step by step so that they could understand what happened next, and what happened next.
Right. So what do we want to do? We made some revisions, I think.
That's what you have before you. So this clarifies all the things that Ms. Clarkson talked about in that Go team section. Very clearly kind of clarifies that process. You will meet with the Go team. You will be asked to present to the Go team if you want to, right? And once the Go team's recommendation is made, the next available meeting, you'll be placed on it to present your case, right? You get the recommendation, the feedback from the Go team, do with it what you want, right? And then make your case.
Best way for you to get to a yes is by doing these things.
Yeah, and then, if you guys want to, push forward with the public hearing, may or may not be an agreement in place, by the time that hearing happens, but if it's kind of a, nobody knows what they want to do yet, we don't want to, the city attorney's got a lot of things on his plate, and so adding an agreement that could change during the public hearing is kind of, it's not a good use of that time. And just clarifies kind of all those pieces. And the second thing it does is it had both, it had two applications, or two categories. It had a business category and a quality of life category. Now it just has one. And the only thing you'll see in there is an item 4 under the GO team. It's just for projects related to the creation and retention of primary jobs. You'll have to do some type of an analysis. You'll have to give us your pro forma, have to talk through all what you're creating, all the rest of it. But if it's a quality of life project, like a habitat deal, they're not gonna have to come with the same type. You know, I think we can ask them for some of those things, but not in the same way that you're gonna get it for primary jobs. So it simplifies that piece to it.
Shorter.
Shorter. Shorter.
compact.
Right.
Yeah. So hopefully that's helpful to everybody, and so that's what you have in front of you. The application itself, Ms. Hammond had noticed that we sort of call out in the application businesses, but we don't really include nonprofits, so we can just kind of amend that title to, in the application itself, to just say both of those things. And then the last piece I was gonna bring up is that we still have a 2008 incentive policy that is like, it's between the city of Ingram, Kerr County, and the city of Kerrville. And I don't do business with the city of Ingram. It's related to economic development and incentive policies, and that is still on the books. And so we would like to amend that. And so I'll bring that back at a later date, but that's one that's sort of hidden away. And it's not really how we apply when we look at primary jobs and the metrics that we use. It's been 20 years almost, or 16 years. And so I want to bring that back to everybody's plate, but certainly it's the EIC consideration and a city consideration. I don't know that it's, if the other entities are participating. I think that's to what Mayor Blackburn was talking about, part of that EDF, when it was the foundation and it was different, you know, kind of a different makeup. So I'll bring that back in December. I'll send that out to y'all today. I can get that out to you.
Tomorrow's fine.
Yeah.
I'll print it out and we can review it right now.
All right.
That's all I got. So if you
Okay.
want to make some changes to the guidelines, let me know.
I am ready to approve the changes to the guidelines. Any more comments or questions or changes to consider? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the updates to let's see, is it it's kind of the
Guidelines and procedures.
guidelines and procedures,
So moved.
okay, for applicants.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
I'm gonna take a motion.
We did.
Oh,
So moved.
Oh,
They
we
were,
got it? Okay.
yes, we got it.
It happened.
It did. All on that side. All right, thank you. Okay, rescheduling meetings in January, February.
So I don't think we're going to have the same issue we had last year. So currently it's set up for January 20th, which is Martin Luther King Day. And then President's Day is February 17th, so we're not going to be here. So last year we pushed it back a week,
Mhm.
which is the Monday before the council meeting.
Mhm.
So that created kind of an issue, but we were going through all of those quality of life project
Mhm.
considerations. I don't envision that we're going to have that issue. So
So
if
you're
y'all-
recommending we push both of those back?
if you want
week?
to, that's what we've done historically, is pushed it back, so it's the second week instead of the third week.
Oh, pushed
Push
it,
it forward.
moved it forward a week
Well, earlier,
earlier. Okay,
north.
pushed it, okay.
So
It
instead
came
of
earlier
January,
instead of later.
instead of January 20th, do January 13th. And instead of February 17th, do February 10th.
Does anyone have a problem with that?
I just know that I'm out of town on the 13th.
And we don't have to do it on a Monday the week prior. We also talked about we could do it on other days of the week for those 2 months where you do it in the same week. You just do it on like a Wednesday or something like that. Y'all don't have to decide on it now
Let's
either.
decide, yeah, let's make a decision on that next month.
Okay.
Look at those dates.
We'll put a couple of dates together for you and add it to the agenda.
We are for the 13th of January, is that correct?
That's what I put.
Okay, and the 16th in December,
December
December's gonna be on the 16th, so nothing's
this is
changed for that one.
16th.
Okay. All right. Yeah, let's
it.
bring that back next month and make a decision on those two meetings, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah. so
My
if
son's
we
playing
could go
basketball
back
right now, I
That's
really
just
wanna
the
go.
You
following-
you don't wanna talk about future agenda items?
Do we wanna talk
Keep it
about
the
what?
same.
War and peace?
No, I wanna go watch an 8th grade basketball game. Let's do it.
Don't ever let
That's
me
just
say
me being
meeting
selfish.
again.
I understand.